David Arlen played Karl, the Russian accomplice of Nadia, in the Chimes of Big Ben. We asked him how he was offered the role.
My agent just called and said they'd like to see you for a part in The Prisoner because they think you look Russian. And I said, well, I don't think I look Russian at all. And he said, well, Rose Shaw is doing the casting, thinks you look Russian. So I said, fine. So they also did inquire at the beginning as to whether you did speak Russian. And he said, I told him no. And I said, well, that's right, but I don't speak Russian. So he said, anyway, that's set up, so just go and see her. So I went along to her office, which I think, where was it? Bond Street, roundabout there or something. Met Rose Shaw, I'd met before for other things. And she said, would you be interested in doing this part in The Prisoner? Remember the character was called Karl, she said. So I said, yeah, great, because it was, at the time, it was a big new series. I mean, everyone wanted to be in it. So I said, yes, fine. So she said, well, you can meet Don Chaffee, and I met him and said hello to him, and that was about all he said. He just came in and said hello and went out. I thought, ah. Anyway, I spoke to her for another couple of minutes, and off I went, and then a couple of days later, she phoned back, and I got the part. The script turned up. I think it was about 3, maybe 4 small scenes, written in English, with the sort of Russian sort of accent on it. So I learnt it all because it wasn't very big, and I got my dates, everything sorted out, and off I went down to MGM to shoot it. Arrived on the set, and I was introduced to Mr. McGoohan, who then said to me, I want this all in Russian. So I said, oh. I said, oh, I don't speak Russian. So he said, no, I'll get you a Russian coach. So I said, right. So he said, so what I want you to do is to learn all your part in Russian, and obviously you've got to learn all Nadia Gray's part in Russian, because she'll be speaking Russian to you as well. So I thought, fine. So he said, so I'll get you the coach, and I'll sort it all out, and we won't do anything today, he said. And that was it. I remember I went home, and then the call came through that it was all sorted out again. I was going to meet the Russian coach, and she was actually from the Russian embassy. I remember that. And she was quite attractive young woman, actually. So I spent 3 days basically with her in the dressing room, learning this damn thing in Russian. And I found it very, very difficult, because I'm a London guy, I'm a Cockney, and to learn Russian to me was dreadful. There was all the yaj and the raj and all that, and it was driving me mad. So I tried to learn it. She would give me the line in Russian, and I would try and say it, and this wasn't working at all, because I couldn't remember it. So I eventually wrote it down phonetically, and it looked very bizarre on the script. I remember it just looked really strange words. And I eventually learnt it all in Russian. And I also remembered Nadia Gray's bit in Russian. Then we actually come to shoot the damn thing, and we get on the set, and unbeknown to me, Nadia Gray actually speaks Russian, fluent Russian. So my first line in Russian to her, and she said, no, he wouldn't say it that way, it's bad grammar. So McGoohan says, which way would he say it then? So she said he would say, blah, 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 and she comes out with something entirely different in Russian again. Oh no, I remember, yeah, the reason that Nadia Gray said the grammar was wrong for this was the fact that she worked out that the guy's name, Karl, he would have lived in a certain part of Russia, like a certain region. That was the thing. And this was a regional thing, that the guy wouldn't have said this. This was it. Yeah, I remember now. Which I thought was amazing that she'd come out. And of course he picked it up, and he wanted it all. That was it. He had to have it. Even if it didn't make sense. He wasn't particularly worried that nobody could understand what I was saying. he was worried that if anyone did understand what you were saying, like Russian or whatever other languages were spoken, French, because there was all sorts of languages spoken, that they can understand that. So he said, right, we'll do it that way. And that was it. He didn't give me any chance to learn it. He just said, we'll do it that way. So I said to her, well, can you just repeat it just a couple of times? So she repeated it a couple of times to me. I did the best I could with it. And off we went. And we went through it all in Russian, and I managed to get through it. And I was quite pleased with that. And Mcgoohan seemed quite happy with it. And we did another cut rehearsals, and then he decided that as it was all going to be in Russian, and he wasn't going to use subtitles, the only people to understand what we were saying would be Russians. So he felt that this was going to lose a little bit in this scene, and he needed everyone to understand about the watch, because all the business with the watch was in Russian, and that was quite an important part in the episode, because that was how he found out that he wasn't where he was supposed to be eventually. So he then decided to change some of the lines back into English, but he definitely wanted the Russian accent. So I worked on that, and we went through it. And Nadia was happy because we got the right grammar. He was happy because we had the bits in Russian. And then we just shot the scene, I think, a couple of times, and he seemed very happy with it, and that was that. I didn't see the ball, although I shot at it. I mean, I was just shooting at whatever, nothing. I never really knew about what the ball was about.
Was it obvious to you that Patrick was more involved than just as an actor?
I found that when I was there, I do remember that when we did the scene, we did one take, and then he disappeared I remember he disappeared for about half an hour, and I wondered where he'd gone. Then I found out he was actually gone away and directing or pre-directing some other scene, because he was dreadfully involved. He was doing everything, it seems to me. He had, one minute he had his actor's hat on, then he had his producer's hat on, then he'd have his director's hat on. And he also used to check every shot with the director, Don Chaffee. He'd look through the lens and set it all up, make sure he was happy with how it was looking, and then let the director shoot it. But he seemed to have, he had control over everything, and people were coming up to him all the time with things about other episodes which were going on. There was a couple of things he actually wrote as well. So there were people coming up to him all the time when he wasn't actually shooting, with scripts, with wardrobe, with luckily they didn't have those bloody telephones that you got now, so we never got anything done. So he was constantly doing 10,000 things where he should have been concentrating on just playing the part he was doing. And I can understand why he possibly, he had the time when he almost had a breakdown, I think. But he just got so much on his plate, he just couldn't handle it. I mean, it's just impossible. He was good to work. I enjoyed working with him, although he was a perfectionist. I mean, you had to get everything right when you were doing it. There was nothing he wouldn't... every little nuance and everything had to be just right. Otherwise he'd say cut. Although he wasn't directing that episode, he would say cut, stop, or whatever. It's not right, I'll do it again, and off we go again. I like working. It was good to work on the series. I enjoyed it. I feel that if it was done now, using modern day techniques with using everything on location, which you can do now, I think it would really be a great success.
Did you meet any of the other actors in the episode?
One's only involved when you do. If you play a smaller part in any series or a film thing, you're only involved actually with the actors you're working with, because they're called at the same time. You're called at the same time. And if there are other scenes for the actors to be in, the other actors in the series scheduled for that day, then they won't be there at all. So you never meet them. I mean, you could possibly... I've worked on other series where you'd be thinking, oh my God, I didn't know he was in this. Or I've worked with friends. I've watched the things on the screen afterwards and thought, Christ, there's a mate of mine in that. I never saw him. So no, I was only involved with Nadia and Patrick Mcgoohan and Don Chaffee. Because that was it. That was the setup. It was just the three of them. And the rest of the time I was locked in the dressing room, desperately trying to learn these pages of Russian. With breaks for meals with this nice Russian lady. I wonder what happened to her.
Can you remember Mcgoohan and Nadia Gray being wet for the sequence?
Previous to them arriving at the cave, yes, they'd had to dive overboard to avoid the ball that got soaking wet. And on the day, obviously, they were both very dry. But prior to the scene, they were firmly doused down with a couple of buckets of water, and I think we shot 2 or 3 times, and the only